Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of 368 Webinars. We're starting from the top with some music this time. It's going to be a very different year with TSC Webinars. We're going to focus to make it more engaging, more fun. And if you like these jams, go follow TSC Workplace Jams on Spotify. It's quite a fun playlist. And as you're making yourself comfortable, I'm seeing some first timers here, some new folks as well. I mean, first timers, new folks, but also some familiar faces. We're so excited to have you back. Hopefully, you missed us a little bit. Look, as you're making your seat down and your focus in, I'm going to tell you about a couple guidelines we have for our webinars. The first being be present. We ask that if you have an email, Slack, or text message or cat video, please make it wait. This hour here should be focused on learning together as a community. Next is engage. Look, y'all, for the first timers here, you'll see that chat room pop off. In fact, if you're a first timer for these webinars, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. And for those of y'all that have been here before, welcome these new folks because we're going to be learning here together. And I really do encourage you to ask questions and send comments because it'll help keep you present. And finally, doing the 72-hour to-dos. The hardest thing, y'all, is to take that first step after watching a webinar. Get that momentum going. Momentum is the best KPI you can get in any presentation. If you've been here before, you know that we have to-dos over takeaways. And that's why I believe these webinars are a lot of people's favorites because we've chock them full with things that can help you take action. Now, quick intro. If you haven't met me before, I'm Kenny. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 368. And I'm one of those folks that are just so excited to do these webinars because I truly believe that they live our mission. And that mission is to challenge common thinking so that we create a common future. And I want everyone here in this room here today to create their own version of the common future. It's a place where others can't go because they're not bold enough to challenge common thinking. And the webinars we've done in the past, I encourage you, if you haven't had the chance yet to watch them, go catch up. We got some great ones here. In fact, I recognize some of our former webinar speakers right here in the actual chat room. What's up, Betsy? Long time no see. I see Kristen actually up here, who's actually previously spoke on human leadership. We're excited to have you today just as a guest and not as someone that has to present. Cheryl's got to be the one that's completely on today. And so if you want to watch some of our past sessions or sign up for future webinars, go to this link here, 368.com/webinars. Now, y'all, it's the moment you've been waiting for. I'm going to drop the music. I'm going to introduce you to Cheryl. Cheryl here is someone that I've gotten to know over the last couple of months. She's been on some of our past shows, and as a guest, she's always been in the comment section. One day she emailed me a couple of things about storytelling, including her South by Southwest talk. And when I watched it, I immediately thought, one, this person has to be my friend. And two, I want her to be everyone else's friend because just her way of how she frames up storytelling and teaches others on how to tell stories, it's so moving. She's going to share with you a couple of frameworks here today and also some really powerful examples of stories at their finest, stories that help people fall in love, move to take an action, and just really grips your heart. She knows how to do it. And so with that being said, I'm done talking here. Cheryl, it's now your show. Take it away.
Thank you, Kenny, and I am so excited to be here. I am going to first share my screen.
All yours. And y'all, as y'all make yourself comfortable here, make sure you pop up in the questions and the comments. One thing too is make sure when you do send any questions or comments, make sure it's addressed to everyone in the room and not just panelists. But that's enough of me. Cheryl, what you got?
So first, what I got is a huge thanks. A thanks to everyone here for being here, and huge thanks to you, Kenny, for inviting me to be a part of your fabulous webinar series, and also for being such a terrific collaborator as I was adapting what I do to a 368 experience. Today, I'm going to give you tools to connect with people across all spheres of your life through a framework of storytelling that will enable you to change people's attitudes and behavior. I've been telling stories like this for a long time, mostly as a director, writer, and producer. I started out doing long form entertainment. I was part of a small team that made a feature documentary about children with mental illness that was nominated for an Academy Award. I was one of the producers on David O. Russell's first movie, Spanking the Monkey, which won the Sundance Audience Award. I've created, directed, written, produced hundreds of hours for outlets like these. And then about 7 years ago, I saw something going on in the advertising world that got me so excited. So brands like Patagonia and Dove were telling stories that were creating positive social movements. So I founded a company, Creative Breed, I call us an empathy agency, to use my long form storytelling expertise and work with brands to help them tell their stories. So some of my brand work includes directing and producing a feature documentary funded by PwC and UBS that follows 6 young people for a year and a half launching startups in Detroit, campaign videos for Andrew Yang when he was running for president, a hit web series, and national brand campaigns. I also now do a lot of public speaking, workshops, and consulting around storytelling and empathy in marketing for social impact, leadership, and all forms of connection. There is nothing more exhilarating than forming a deep emotional connection with someone else. And one of the best ways to do that is through story. When we're moved by a story, we often say it pulled at our heartstrings. And that is actually where I feel it in my body. I don't know where others feel it. But scientists have discovered there's something else going on inside our bodies. Our brain chemistry is altered. They find that in the lab, when people are moved by a story, they see a spike in these 3 hormones. So oxytocin, the love hormone, it's the chemical behind human connection. Cortisol, which is part of our alarm system, it captures and sharpens our attention, and dopamine, which helps us focus and process and remember information. And they also find that the brain waves of the people tracking the story mirror the brain waves of the people in the story. There's a scientific term for this: narrative transportation. And I find this pretty incredible. What it means is that if we craft stories really well, we can cause people to secrete hormones that in turn cause our brains to mirror the emotions and behaviors of the characters in the story. And this is how we can harness storytelling to change people's attitudes and behavior. But stories have to have a few key elements in order to do this. Today, I am going to share a storytelling method I've developed that will enable you to achieve narrative transportation across the stories you tell in marketing, in fundraising, leading and managing, parenting, really all forms of human interaction. Because at heart, it's about empathy, being responsive to, understanding the needs and feelings of others so that you can activate those powerful chemicals of connection within all of us. Most of my examples today are going to be video from brand campaigns, but you can use this method across any medium, any platform, and at any budget. And because this is a 368 webinar, of course, there are going to be plenty of to-dos. And at the end, I'm going to ask you to apply these 3 steps to telling a story about someone you choose. It can be yourself, someone related to your company, or to a client. So let's dive in. Step 1, make people fall in love. If you do this, you can activate oxytocin, the love hormone. Oxytocin enables us to bond with, trust, and feel empathy for people in real life and also in stories. And to do this, make people fall in love, to do number 1, feature people who are willing to be vulnerable and share the full range of human emotions. You want to find people who are universally relatable. So this is Joe Lamar. I wonder if people here find Joe relatable. I also wonder what labels you are putting on Joe right now. I cast Joe for a campaign I did for Andrew Yang early on in his when he was running for president. He came to me and he said, Cheryl, what can you make for me that will meet these two goals? He wanted to capture his slogan, humanity first, and also capture and convey his own humanity. At the time, he was very much just the math guy. And he also wanted to reach an audience that was outside of the narrow demographic he was speaking to at the time, which were mostly young white guys from the tech and startup world. So I said, Andrew, we need to find people who embody your values, who embody the need for your policies, and who are from demographic groups that you want to reach, and then film you with them to bring out your humanity. So I did an 8-minute mini doc with Joe and a 1-minute social media cut down, and we're going to watch the short piece now.
I'm Joseph Lamar. Currently I work at UPS and I'm a social worker. Just making ends meet is difficult. Things are tough. Tougher than, sometimes I wonder how people are really surviving out there. Is this the next president? The next president of the United States?
It very well may be. Hello,
I'm Joseph.
Hey, Joseph.
This is my husband,
nice
Jose.
Oh, it's great to meet you both. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out and just giving me hope too.
It means so much, man. We can win this whole thing. Give me a hug.
I get a hug from the next president.
So I have a question for everyone here, and please share your thoughts in the chat. Does Joe feel relatable now? And how and why? And did you put labels on him before? What were those labels? And do you still see him through that prism? We'll take 20, 30 seconds. And
Yes, people make their way in the chat. I already see some people responding, Kara. Thank you so much. It's real, right? A lot of people are commenting here that they're they were surprised. They were surprised based on the tattoos. Some were surprised that he was gay. And others, it seems like they were surprised that how relatable he ended up being. For me, y'all, full disclosure, I definitely judged when I first saw that image. I think that's where everyone has like either conscious or unconscious biases. When I saw that, Cheryl, like I was like, damn, that's what you get for judging folks. I think, you should never judge folks, but human nature is to do that. And this spot is a good reminder on why not to do that. Thank y'all for keep sharing that. It seems like right here, the universal sentiment is that it caught some people off guard, but it was very moving.
well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, Kenny. Thank you for sharing, Kenny, and everyone else here who did share. Glad to see we have a lot of empathetic people here, and what people are sharing really mirrors what people said when the spot came out, and especially the 8-minute piece where you get to know Joe and Andrew much better, and you take a much more intense journey of narrative transportation with them. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time being vulnerable sometimes. And it's human nature to want to project that we're strong. But this is another truth about human nature. We are most relatable when we're vulnerable, when we express the full range of feelings that every human being experiences. And that's why Joe is so relatable. Wow, in 47 seconds, the emotions that he expressed ranged from anxiety, despair, fear. But then when Andrew walks through the door, excitement, pride, joy, hope. And then at the end, when they hug, that was a form of love. And every one of us has experienced those feelings at some point in our lives, and probably quite often. So it's through those universally shared feelings that we go on a journey with Joe and tap in to our shared humanity. And because that is the power of empathy, and because Joe's able to tap into our shared humanity, that is how he breaks down certain biases, conscious or not, changes attitudes, and I hope behavior towards people who look like Joe. Another advantage of casting people who are universally relatable is that a brand can go wide and micro target at the same time. So people of color, people from the gay community, and social workers definitely felt that Andrew saw them and loved them. But people from all backgrounds were deeply, deeply moved by this spot. So if you want to cast influencers or your people who match your personas, you can do that, but only if the people are genuine and really can tap into a full range of human emotion. Which brings us to make people fall in love, to do number 2. In order for us, the storytellers, to elicit that full range of emotion from someone, we need to practice active, engaged listening to tap into those emotions. We need to show up in our full emotional being and be vulnerable and share stories as well. And this is what I do when I'm directing. I start out by asking people questions that aren't too vulnerable. I find common ground and share some of my own stories, and that builds trust. And then I'm able to ask questions that are increasingly more vulnerable. But I do it with great sensitivity and with genuine interest. And I show that I'm fully present and listening by also being silent in those really awkward silences that, it's very hard. We don't like silence. So what we do is we jump in and say something. But people, when you give them space, that's when they can really be their full selves. And so I recommend you try doing that at work with people at home, staying silent in those silences. And I also take an emotional journey with people. So when Joe was weeping, I was doing all I could to hold back my own tears. And by the end of the day filming with him, I felt like we had formed such a deep, intimate, emotional connection that we were connected in a way that was bigger and greater than the two of us. I mean, it's just a really exhilarating feeling. Political canvassers have discovered that this approach of active, engaged listening and tapping into our shared humanity is also a way that they can break down voters' prejudices and change people's voting behavior. It's called deep canvassing. I want you to think about someone in your life where there is a divide. It might be political, but not necessarily. So maybe someone at work, maybe a significant other or a child. And when I describe what deep canvassers do, I want you to think about if you might apply this approach to bridging the divide with that person. Some people don't want to engage in this way, but it's worth a try, and it definitely beats screaming at each other or shutting down on each other. So deep canvassers knock on a door and they ask someone their point of view. So if they're canvassing around LGBTQ rights, for instance, they'll ask. And then they'll listen, they'll stay calm and quiet and listen, and then they'll mirror back to the person what they've heard. The person might say something that's offensive to the canvasser or hurtful, but the canvasser stays calm. And it's not because they condone what the person's saying or agree with them. But what happens is that when we have such a fundamental need to be seen and heard, and when we are seen and heard, our oxytocin flows. We let our guard down, we let our walls down, we get less combative, we're more open-minded. And so then the canvasser can start sharing his or her stories and find common ground. And they try to tap into a time when the voter has felt left out or ridiculed for being different, and help the people see how that's the same how someone gay or transgender might be feeling. And by tapping into our shared humanity, they've been able to change people's attitudes and voting behavior. It's the only thing that has worked. So recent research has shown that even in the workplace, engaged listening and mutual vulnerability foster understanding, closeness, and trust, when the normal team building exercises or outings only perpetuate the usual power dynamics and still leave people feeling left out. So what the researchers did was They paired people up one-on-one, and they had them ask each other questions, starting with not too vulnerable and then increasingly more vulnerable. And this did drive intimacy, trust, and inclusivity. They used 36 questions developed by a psychologist 2 decades ago that the New York Times reprinted in this article that went viral. So I think some of you here probably have used these 36 questions. Kenny, I know you have. What was your experience?
Yeah, so we actually did this during Christmas with my wife and some of her friends. And I'll tell you, this is like a very interesting activity. I'll post the actual link in the chat in a bit. But this was so interesting because it's basically you can get to know a complete stranger at a very deep, intimate level more than someone that's super close with you. It felt kind of weird, like after we all did it, we're like, damn, did we just become super like best friends, you know? I recommend anyone to do this because not only is it like a great way to get closer, but it's a great way to get closer pretty quickly. So I think even organizations should bring their whole self to work for anyone there. I recommend even going down to this because you can find a lot about each other. And when you find a lot about each other, I think you trust each other more as well. But definitely recommend this questionnaire. I'll post it in the chat in a second.
Right. So leaders, yeah, I mean, I haven't done it yet, but I've heard from a lot of friends who have same reaction. So the best leaders also practice empathy and active engaged listening to support their employees and to break down barriers at work. And that way, everyone can show up in their best selves and all reach their greatest potential together. And this is what brands need to be doing now more than ever as well in COVID, actively showing empathy and listening to their customers. Which brings us to make people fall in love to do number 3. Show empathy, be guided by your audience's needs and emotions, not your own. Do you remember those early months of COVID? Brands struggled to find the right tone and they wanted to show that they were being empathetic, but they had a really hard time, and no wonder. I mean, there was so much uncertainty and none of us had been through this before. So they wanted to project strength, again, that fear of vulnerability. They all, or not all, but many put out ads that sounded alike, and they all had these words: we understand you, we care, we are here for you. But it just, those ads that many people made memes about just felt tone deaf to what was going on in the country. And they also didn't feel very empathetic because they were about the brand, not about the customers. So if you want to show your customers that you are empathetic, listen to them, and the real kind of listening, not just through data, but the human kind. The company Square, super successful company that makes tools for small business owners to launch and run their companies, did exactly that. The social media team started recording audio recordings with their customers. And when the brand team heard them, they were so moved, they turned 6 into a full-blown brand campaign. These spots are super guerrilla in how they're made. I know that they didn't want to take the risk of sending crews out to film in the early months of COVID, but also they really match the tone. And I don't know what Square spent on them, but they do illustrate that even with video, you can tell super moving stories at a low budget because they're simple, if you cast well and they're well crafted. So let's watch one.
One of the things that I love about being a business owner is that I can create a little bit of love and joy and give it to somebody else. I'm a food truck that serves healthy juices. I bring people together with my truck. There's so much growth coming out of this pandemic, and I've learned a lot about myself as a business owner. I've learned so much about adversity and pushing through things. It's scary, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's been emotional, but at the same time, it shows you a lot about who you really are. Everybody wants a business, but nobody wants to put in that work. It's so exhausting. But if you really want it, you can have it. You got to sacrifice,
So I wonder if people here, really moving. I wonder if people here can relate to Andrew Mora's grit and resilience. I definitely can. And he was super vulnerable, but also really strong. And I'm sure inspired business owners around the country who are going through what he's going through also. These spots were very successful for Square, and they illustrate that if you want to show your customers that you understand them, let them speak for themselves. Put a spotlight on them. Square has been turning its customers into heroes since the inception of the company. And when they find someone who's moving and has a great story, they scale that story across so many platforms, not just a video and social media. They feature the person in podcasts, webinars, pre-COVID live events. They do Q&As. They take the learnings from that person and push them out as tips. They're doing a joint venture with Eater now to put a spotlight on some of their customers in the food space. So this is another great advantage of telling stories around real people. You can put the stories together super fast, and you can scale them very efficiently and cost effectively. And you can also get a lot of earned media. Square is also one of the few companies that's cracked the code on making mini docs about their customers. They have a series called For Every Dream, beautifully told stories, 10 to 20 minutes long. And with them, they have been able to be featured in major film festivals. They've won Webby Awards, Tribeca X Awards. Every one of the mini docs has been featured as a Vimeo staff pick, which goes out to a massive audience. So again, telling stories around real people, if you do it well, there are lots of innovative avenues for distribution as well. So Peloton put a spotlight on its customers recently, and in doing so, it changed the brand perception from elitist and sexist. I think we can all remember this Peloton wife spot that came out at the end of 2019 and got Peloton into a lot of trouble and generated a lot of very funny memes. They didn't do another campaign until last October, so almost a year later. They came out in October of 2020 with millions of reasons, and they featured 7 of their customers, a very diverse casting. The videos, some of them are hilarious. Again, very simply made, but beautifully executed and superb casting. We've seen a lot of video, or a few videos so far, so I'm going to now show how to tap into the zeitgeist and capture the relatability of someone in a different medium. So here's Yam in front of a billboard. She is a high school teacher and a mom of 3 young kids. And she's the only COVID story that they feature, but all the other 6 as well feel very of the moment. So make people fall in love to do the 3 big takeaways. Feature people who share the full range of human emotion. Practice engaged listening to tap into that emotion and show true empathy. Think of others. I mean, even if you're doing a presentation or telling a story about yourself, if your motivation is to impress people or to load them up on information, you're going to lose their attention. If you think about their needs and put their needs first and put something together through that prism, you will connect. And that brings us to step 2. Capture and hold people's attention. And if you do that, you can activate 2 hormones, the other 2 key hormones in achieving narrative transportation. Cortisol and dopamine, which are super helpful in our attention-starved world. So cortisol is part of our fight or flight or alarm system, and it makes us kind of perk up and pay attention. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter that, among many other things, helps us focus and process and remember information. And the way to do this is to craft a story with a narrative story arc and rising tension. Sometimes when brands tell stories with real people, they don't capture and hold our attention because they ramble or there's just way too much information being thrown at us. So I'm going to provide steps to how to beat out the beats of a story with rising tension. And I'll do it through how I work with clients. So oftentimes a client will come to me and they know they want a video, but they don't know the story they want to tell. And I start by asking these questions. What is the goal of telling this story? Who are you speaking to? Who's the audience? That also helps determine sometimes the platform or the medium. And then what do you want those people to do after they have gone on this powerful journey of narrative transportation? And that helps us figure out who to cast. Or even if we start, they know who they want to feature, we still have to answer the first 3 questions, and then that helps determine who else to film with and locations, and then helps me beat out the steps. And to beat out the steps with a story with rising tension, I use this story structure of struggle and triumph. So a character has a goal with high stakes, obstacles that get in the way, they struggle to reach that goal, they transform in the process, and then at the end, they reach their goal, triumph. It's really important to end on triumph, because if somebody is going on a journey with the person you feature, you want to leave your audience feeling empowered that they can also achieve that. And you also want to leave them inspired. There are 2 recent studies that have shown that inspiration is a really powerful driver for a brand. Brands that inspire their customers they grow faster and they can charge more money for their goods and services. And leaders who inspire their employees have employees who are 2 times more productive. The other advantages to struggle and triumph is we love to root for the underdog. And also, this is an organic way to elicit a full range of emotion from the person you're featuring. Now, every example we've looked at so far follows this structure. It sounds very formulaic, but it's not. As with any creative endeavor, it's all about the art and the craft of how you apply it. So it is important, certainly with video, to engage people who really understand how to craft a narrative story. And we're going to look at an example of one of the best. So I think we've all seen the Microsoft 2019 Super Bowl ad, "We All Win." But let's watch it now through this prism of rising tension. And you can also think about vulnerability, but struggle and triumph.
My name is Grover.
Sean. My name is Ian.
I'm Taylor.
My name is Owen, and I am 9.5 years old.
So Owen was born with a rare genetic disorder called Escobar syndrome.
He's had 33 surgeries to date.
I love video games, my friends, my family, and again, video games.
It's his way of interacting with his friends when he can't physically otherwise do it.
What I like about the adaptive controller is now everyone can play. You can just say, all right, that's that button, that's that button, that's that button. Perfect.
One of the biggest fears early on is, how will Owen be viewed by the other kids?
He's not different when he plays.
No matter how your body is or how fast you are, you can play. It's a really good thing to have in this world.
I have seen that spot so many times, and it still like moves me so deeply. I wonder others too. So again, through the prism of struggle and triumph. The kids have a goal. They want to play video games because they love them, and also to get that sense of belonging with their friends. They have obstacles that get in the way, their physical disabilities. The adaptive controller comes along and helps them reach their goal, triumph of playing. And because the adaptive controller helps them reach their goal, we feel even more emotionally bonded to that. And Microsoft did a 2-minute spot where they added a lot more product information. The kids are unboxing it and then showing us the features of how they use it. But because the information is in service to this narrative story, we never feel like we're being sold a product, and we retain that information. In fact, scientists have shown that when you provide information in service to a narrative story, people take it in and retain it 19 times better, which of course makes sense, because if we've activated dopamine, which allows us to retain, to take in and retain information, that makes sense, and also activating a lot of other chemicals in our brains. But so again, I mean, if you want to have product information, want lots of information, put it in a narrative story arc. So, step 3, mobilize people to act. And the way to do this is to rally people around a stirring call to action so they convert their emotions into positive action. And that is, again, another great benefit of telling stories like this. If you move people so deeply, first of all, you don't need to make the call to action about buying your product, because if you've moved them deeply, they're going to feel bonded to you, and they will do that anyway. So in telling these stories, you can drive sales, and you can also drive positive social impact by creating a call to action around your mission, around positive social movements. I mean, if we look at Microsoft, their mission is to empower and enable everyone to reach their potential. And the movement they're tapping into with that spot and also with the product is inclusivity. So let's look at a spot from a company that is a master at call to action, which has spurred great positive social movements with their spots, and they feature real people a lot. This is the Serena Williams spot, Just Do It, with her dad. So when we're watching, certainly watch for the vulnerability and the rising tension, but most of all, I want you to think about how they use the call to action and how that call to action makes you feel at the end.
This is you at the US Open. This is you. Good service motion. Boom! Very good. Keep that perfect service motion you have. Right there. Good. Boom! Switch to the backhand. Lean into it. Good follow through. Take the net. Nice try. Make sure you're controlling that ball on every shot. There you go. Very good. Back, back, back. Put it away. Be tough, just like you want to win. Just like you at the US Open. Right there. This is you. Very good, Serena Williams.
I don't know how you feel right now. I feel like I could do anything. So, and please feel free to share how that call to action makes you feel. And this is my call to action to everyone here. It's only a crazy dream until you do it. So please do it. Tell stories about real people that convey the full range of human emotion. Don't be afraid of that emotion. Emotions can get messy. But that's how to be relatable and human, certainly as a brand and as a leader and as a parent as well. So, and don't be afraid of your own emotion. Show up in your full emotional being. And when you find a story that moves you, that makes your heart leap or break, or both at the same time, those are my favorite stories, the stories about the strength of the human spirit. Tell those stories. And in showing up in your full emotional being, be sensitive and responsive to the emotional feelings and needs of others. That is how we tap into our shared humanity and break down the walls and the biases and drive connection in all spheres of our life. And that is how we will bridge divides. So, the recap for today, the three big takeaways: make people fall in love, feature people who are universally relatable, capture and hold people's attention, craft a story with rising tension, using struggle and triumph, and mobilize people to act by rallying them around a stirring call to action so they convert their feelings into action. And because this is a 368 webinar, your 72-hour to-dos. Email me or Kenny, and we'll send you a copy of all these frameworks and some extras. And then I want you to apply these 3 steps to telling a story about someone you choose. Again, it can be yourself, someone related to your company, or someone related to a client. And in doing that, while the webinar is fresh, you'll have your own aha moments, or apply it to a project you're working on. And I love to tell these stories. We're going to do a Q&A, but I would say I would love to take this journey with any of you here today. So if you have storytelling needs or would like me to come to a workshop or consult, please reach out. So now we're going to do the Q&As.
Good job, Cheryl. I don't know if you see this, but the chat room is popping up. A lot of good responses here. Especially, I wish we could share after those videos. It seems like a lot of people are super moved. I'm gonna type here real quick our contact information. If you didn't get it, definitely do the to-dos. Those are one of those things that after every TSC webinar, they want you to take momentum. Um, keep sending. I'm noticing some comments, some questions here as well. We'll take a couple of questions where we have to go. We want to make sure that we get everyone ending on time. But the first question that I see here for you, Cheryl, is from Julian Cheevers. He said, great presentation, great examples, but in a world of advertising and so many messages, how important is sharing true slash real world stories versus fictionalized stories to create the empathy slash connection that cuts through? What's your take on that?
The framework I just presented is equally applicable to fictional stories. But we keep seeing and hearing, especially today in COVID and with a lot of other things happening around us, how critically important it is for brands to be human, authentic, relatable, empathetic, all of those words we hear over and over again. And so for a brand to do that, featuring real people is so much more authentic, genuine. Unruly, which tracks the emotional responses to all of the Super Bowl ads, showed that Microsoft had a 95% in terms of credibility and authenticity, staggering 95% reaction to that spot because they used real people.
Wow.
And not only real people, but real people who are genuine. I mean, that is the key. It's not about, are you using real people or actors? Are you tapping into what makes someone genuine? Are you casting people, first of all, who are genuine, who can share that full range of human emotion? And then are you drawing out that authenticity with them? If you film with real people and you ask them to say lines or to do things that are not organic to them, they will not be relatable. Like, don't use real people for that. So again, it's a very nuanced question because it's not a binary. But yes, real people, and then let them be genuine, let them be themselves.
So we're going to segue into former webinar speaker Betsy's question here is, while we might understand the value of storytelling, how do you tell your clients on how they should measure their storytelling. So how do you measure your storytelling essentially after you do a project like this?
Well, that is not my area of expertise. I can talk what about experiences clients have had. I mean, I mentioned this Unruly, who tracked all of the emotional indices of every Super Bowl ad. So I know that there are companies like Unruly, obviously, that are tracking this. I did a spot for UBS to help them break down biases that male funders have and to inspire females to launch companies. And they put it out, but they used this spot at live events a lot, and also internally with their financial advisors. I mean, they got just extraordinary feedback. So a lot of the times brands are getting, feedback. Andrew got extraordinary feedback on those spots. But Kenny, you probably have insights about this.
Yeah, I mean, the easy one is like brand awareness, like measuring via sentiment. You can see how much you're trending on social media as well. Hashtags that relate to your spot, good or bad. The one that I kind of go to is like I think at the end of every video should have some kind of call to action where you're gonna send to a web page or something that they can go to. If there's like some way that you can convert them, such as after a video ad, you send them to a website and they sign up for something. That's a good way to actually say like, oh wow, people are actually interested. I targeted the right people and they actually did what I wanted them to do. So there's different ways agencies can track that. It goes back to what you said though, Cheryl. Everyone should have a call to action, but they should be able to find a way to measure that call to action. That's how you can be able to tell the value of a video pretty quickly. But it's also, when the video goes out there, there's a lot of questions on like long-term value as well. You might know the short-term value because you might see like clicks and like conversions go up, but you don't know really how long it'll impact, a client or a company. I mean, you could give an example of UBS, right? That video you did for women founders, right? Like it's now, while it was great as a documentary, but they use it for training, right? No.
Well, they they I made it right before COVID hit, so in terms of their distribution, it's a little complicated. But the goal was, yes, to use it at live events and to push it out on social and through other platforms with partners. And also, they are the largest wealth management company in the world. So the person who commissioned it was hoping also to share it with internally with their wealth managers, because they're on the front lines advising other people of what they should be funding. So to change, and most of them are men, so to break down their biases. And there are a lot, women get 2% of funding a year, and that's most people making funding decisions or driving funding decisions are men, and they have a lot of biases, conscious or not, about female founders. But also, what you talked about in terms of the long-term benefits, Kenny, there's, so much written about the huge benefits of brand building, not just that quick sale. And so telling stories like these that bring people on an emotional journey, that leave them feeling super inspired. First of all, people tend to share those, so you get a lot more earned media, but also they're really great for brand building, which in the long term is super important for a brand.
Yeah. Let's see. We have another question. Dane, what's up, man? Dane Miller has been someone that's been coming to these webinars frequently. His question is, how do creatives coach presenters to use more stories in their work?
Well, you first of all have to know your audience. So whoever you're coaching, do you have to convince them of the need for this? And if you have to convince them, like, how are they most easily convinced? One way to do it is to have them experience a presentation that is told through the prism of a narrative story, and then have them experience a presentation that's a data dump and see how they feel. And then maybe show them data. I mean, in the extras I include, there's going to be a lot of articles about the science of storytelling, and what scientists are uncovering in the lab. So if it's somebody who's like all about data, then provide them with data. Kenny, what do you do? I mean, how do you do it?
I mean, whenever we really need to shake someone to like use stories, we ask them to record themselves and watch themselves present. And if you're bored, I mean, that tells you right there that, you should probably tell a story or two, because stories are a great way to get to touch on like that deep part of the human experience, like that emotion. Um, if you watch yourself present and usually you're boring, usually that's because there's a lot of stories in there that feel relatable. I mean, the things that you share today aren't just for videos and like productions. It's just good old storytelling. Another way to do that too is like you said, data points. Whenever someone says a lot of data, they're right when they ask me, "Is this boring?" And the way that you actually break it apart and break that monotony is either tie that data point to a story or tie a series of data points into a story where the audience can get it. I tell a lot of people too, is like stories are such a powerful way to convince folks because they have to be able to walk, through the shoes of the story that you're telling about. An opener for your presentation is a great time to tell a story versus also a closer. But when you have to convince someone, when you use the power of a story and you make it feel relatable, and have a call to action, that's how you get people moving. There's a really good question here about Serena's father. So this goes back to the Nike ad. Cheryl, what's your take about using Serena's dad's voice in the ad? Do you think it helps or hurts like the audience's like empathy with the actual ad itself?
I think it helps so much in many ways. First of all, I talked a lot about finding people who are universally relatable in their emotions, but also we want to find experiences that are universally relatable. So that experience of the bond between a parent and a child, it is universally relatable to all of us who have been parented and also to any of us who are parents. And my father's not alive anymore, but he was my greatest champion. He told me every day of my life, you can do anything you put your mind to. So when he is there coaching her and saying, think of yourself at the US Open, I cry. I mean, I'm hearing my own father. And again, I'm sure there are plenty of dads or moms and dads who are also taking that journey empathetically through the father and thinking about coaching their own children. So again, that is a universally relatable experience. And it also gives us two people to take that emotional journey through: her, and I took the journey through her as well, and also him. So great question.
Well, we got a follow up one who actually piggybacked on Dane's question from David Brin. Thanks for submitting in, man. What's your thoughts, Cheryl, about using fictionalized stories? Do you think there's a cost to it when we use it? I think this goes piggyback on if you're giving a presentation and you're telling fake stories. Like, is that like what do you think is the cost for that?
Oh my God, that's a whole nother conversation.
I
especially
agree.
now, especially now. Actually, my brother is the founder of a nonprofit called the News Literacy Organization, which is all about teaching people the difference between truth and
So you feel this
not
one.
not truth. I feel this one, but I don't. It's less germane because again, I also do feel that with branded content, as long as a brand's very clear about that they're telling a story and it is part of their advertising, I think that's okay as long as they're transparent about that.
Yeah. And personally for me is I always feel like you should always tell stories that are really real because, it's like when you see a story that you feel like is real, you found out it was like fictionalized or like someone acted it, like you just feel like you've been
Oh
manipulated.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you just feel like kind of salty about it. Like at 368, like, whenever we go market ourselves, like we're not going to use fake people to talk about us. Like it just ruins that authenticity.
Oh,
Um,
if that was the question, absolutely, like
yeah.
absolutely. And again, I think that if you hire like why hire actors when you can get real people who can, like, real people say the funniest shit, right? They're going to say much better stuff than you can script for anyone else. Again, if you get them comfortable and find people who are genuine. So even if it's a testimonial, if you have
Yeah.
a great service or
Don't fake a
product,
testimonial. Oh my God. Yeah.
right? Yeah, and if you have a really great product or service, you're going to be able to find people who are going to emote with so much greater like enthusiasm and passion and genuine sentiment than anyone could ever script.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna take one more. We want to make sure we end on time. I see a question from Elizabeth Harris. So this is a question for you, Cheryl. How do you find and then approach those you cast? Specifically, what do you ask them? Is there a quid pro quo for their participation?
That's a great question, casting, because I think that people tend to underestimate how critically important it is who we choose to feature. That and crafting that narrative story arc are the two most important things. So, and in terms of how to cast, again, I've done spots where a client has used a casting agency that usually uses actors, and that doesn't work out as well. They're casting agencies that specialize in casting real people. A close friend of mine runs a really great one, Genuine. She cast the Peloton spots. But I do a lot of my own casting also if a client comes to me directly. So with UBS, that spot to try to spur greater funding to female founded companies, when we decided that we were going to feature a female founder, because I did Generation Startup in the startup world, I have a lot of contacts in the VC and startup world. So I put out feelers to everyone I knew in that world. I told them the criteria of the type of person I was looking for. Then I looked at videos that I could find online of the person, and I went back to UBS and I said, these are the people I recommend. With Andrew Yang, when Andrew came to me and told me what he wanted me to make for him, I figured I needed about a month to put all the pieces in place for the production. So we looked at his schedule and saw that in a month he would be in Las Vegas. So we engaged the Yang Gang in Las Vegas, and my team and I put together a casting doc that they disseminated, and people had to answer a few questions, and we asked people to self-tape themselves on their phones and upload a short video of themselves. So as soon as I saw Joe's video, I fell madly in love with him, and I felt we need to feature Joe. I asked Andrew to look at the video of Joe, and he was like, Cheryl, I trust you. If you think we should use Joe, and I'm like, Andrew, please, this is a really risky choice. But he didn't look at Joe. He didn't know anything about Joe until he showed up that day.
Wow.
I'm glad it worked out, because that was the riskiest casting choice I've ever done. But I just felt it in my gut. And then yeah, so but I've also worked with brands who have asked me to cast their influencers, and the Chico spot I did, they worked with an agency that cast normally models and actors, but that spot was all with real people, and there was one influencer. They sent me casting tapes, and I was able to weigh in and say which people I thought we should use, and we were in alignment about that, except for one person. They wanted to use one of their influencers, and I wasn't really feeling it, and I did film with her, and then they asked me to take her out of the spots because she just wasn't. I mean, well, there are just some people who it's like it's really uncomfortable.
You can feel the real.
You can feel the real, which is you can absolutely feel the real, which is why, again, if you want to use influencers or people who match your personas, you have to make sure that they also share and convey that sense of emotion, and also that it's genuine. I mean, especially in video, like people can smell and sense immediately if someone is genuine or if they're putting it on. They immediately, right, Kenny?
Amen. Retweet to that. They totally can. Well, y'all, it looks like that's about it on the questions. If you have a couple more, feel free to email us. I posted our contact down here in the comments. I already can tell based on these comments here, I'm already probably going to get a lot of emails along with you, Cheryl. Thank y'all so much for coming to this first edition of the year for 368 webinars. Our next one's going to be next month, sneak peek. It's going to be with Adam Morgan, the executive creative director of Adobe. He's going to be sharing pretty much his frameworks on measuring creativity. It's going to be another fun-filled session on, learning more about to-dos versus takeaways, especially about creativity within your org. With that being said, let's go ahead and end now. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming here. I know it's been a couple of months since we've been working on this. So excited we finally can get out in the wild, and hopefully you make some new friends. And y'all, for those of y'all tuning in, hopefully Cheryl can be your friend too as well. Trust me, she's definitely someone you want in your corner. And finally, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll go ahead and see y'all next month. Take care, y'all.
Thank you, everyone. And Kenny, thank you so much.
It's been an honor. Talk to y'all soon, everybody.
Okay.